everybody, it's Sarah and today I'm here with my September wrap-up, and to be honest, I absolutely killed it. I read a total of 7 books this month, which is the most books I have read in a month so far this year, aside from August, which was during the nudes. But to be honest, I read a lot more chunky books this month, so I'm not even sure if August is the month where I read the most pages. I might have actually topped that this month, but that's not important. Let me just get right into the wrap-up because this is going to be quite long, I think. Okay, so the first book I read was Von Baghdad nach Istanbul by Karl May. This is travel literature. This is old German travel literature. Karl May is a quite well-known author in the German-speaking countries of Europe. He's especially known for 2 travel series which follow actually the same dude, but in one of the series he's in the Wild West and he goes by the name of Old Shatterhand, and in the other series, which this is a part of, he's in the Middle East and he goes by the name of Karaben Nemzi. And story-wise, I did not enjoy this book too much. It was interesting for the first like 100 or 200 pages, but the thing is, this book does not really have a plot or a structure. It just follows Karaben Nemzi and the different people he meets, and then he's caught by someone, and then he escapes again, and then he helps someone, and then he's chasing someone, and that person also escapes, so he has to continue chasing him. So it's kind of like a series of different adventures, but the book as a whole doesn't have a climax. It also doesn't end. It's gonna just continue straight on with the next book. Von Baghdad nach Istanbul, chronologically, I think is actually the second book set in the Middle East, but I didn't have any problems getting into the story because it's just not important. And to be honest, although that also got a bit stale after a while, the thing that I enjoyed most about the book, although maybe enjoyment isn't the right word, that interested me the most, also as a person who studies cultural and social anthropology, because depiction of different ethnicities in media is something that we talk about in lectures, is how Karl May, for his time, probably wasn't racist at all, or wouldn't have been called racist, because Karaben Nemzi, whenever he meets people that are Muslim, for example, he is very respectful, he treats them respectful, he greets them as is proper for their religion and not for his religion. But at the same time, it's also very blatantly obvious that he thinks they're all barbarians, and then there's scenes where like, no, it's your country, your rules here, you're allowed to decide what we should do with the prisoner, and then they of course decide to kill the prisoner, and then he's like, oh my god, I as a Christian, I can't deal with that because for whatever reason, and it just makes it obvious that he thinks he's better because he's a Christian. And it was just kind of very interesting the way this book was racist, because as I said, in a way it was very respectful towards other cultures, but at the same time it also was very blatantly obvious that Karl May thinks the Middle Eastern cultures are very barbaric. So yeah, that's what I kind of enjoyed most about reading the book, like these aspects. But it also got kind of stale after 100, 200 pages, so I only gave this book a total of 2 stars. Then next I read The Crown of Coral and Pearl by Marillion. This is the first book in a series. I don't know how many books that series will have, and this was a buddy read I did. And I did really enjoy this book. I think I gave it 3.5, 4 stars, but it kind of falls into this realm of I'm very interested in continuing the series. I enjoyed the characters, but it's not anything outstanding. It was a very easy book to read and I couldn't put it down while reading it, but at the same time I don't think it will stay with me for a very long time, and it definitely won't become an all-time favorite, but I can still recommend it to other people. The only thing that I absolutely didn't enjoy about this book was the romance, because it was very insta-lovey and it's just 2 characters changed 2 sentences and they already knew they were infatuated and in love with each other, so that was kind of iffy. I didn't really enjoy that. So yeah, that was the main thing, but I'm still looking forward to picking up the next book. I think it's gonna come out next year probably, so we'll see what I think of the next book, and once I read that I will tell you more. Then I actually read a bunch of books at the same time, and I had to babysit my little sister at my dad's place, and I took all of the books with me to my dad's place, and then I forgot them there, and I could only go back 2 days later when I also had to babysit my little sister. And so in between at home, instead of, you know, picking up one of the other books that I'm kind of currently reading or that I had picked up early in the year and then put down again, I picked up The Magician's Guild by Trudy Canavan, which is the first book in a Black Magician series. This time I know what the series is called, and I finished this in a day. I have talked about this series a lot already on my channel. It's one of the first fantasy series that I ever read. I highly enjoy it. I absolutely love it, and I loved it just as much this time around when reading it. I think I actually got more out of it now because I am older and I can kind of understand more of the occurring themes in this book. This is probably one of those books that would be counted as YA literature by publishers, but it was still published luckily at the time when YA wasn't really a thing yet, because it's definitely an adult novel, even though the main character is like 16, 17, 18 years old. And yeah, it follows a country who is kind of led by this magician's guild, even though they also have a king, and all magicians come from very rich families though. But it follows Sonia, who is from the slums, and it's discovered that she has a very huge magical potential, and so she is taken into this guild, and I really love it. Next, I finished another reread, and that is Nevernight by J. Kristoff, which is of course the first book in the Nevernight Chronicles, and Dark Dawn, of course, was published in September, and I kind of missed rereading Nevernight and God's Grave before then, so I am currently rereading God's Grave, and I reread Nevernight in September because I just wanted everything to be fresh on my mind. And also the first time I read this, I did not read the footnotes. This time around I did read the footnotes, and I'm still not a fan, but I will probably do a review of the whole series once I'm finished with Dark Dawn, so that's all I'm gonna say about this book for now. Then my TBR chart pick for September that I chose was The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, which of course is the second part of The Lord of the Rings. And I finally finished it. I started actually in 2015, and I got halfway through, and I didn't start from the beginning again because I kind of feel like I know the story well enough to not have to start from the beginning again. And I would just rather finish this now, finish the third book, and then properly reread all of the books in one go, maybe even in English, and see what more I can get from it. I enjoyed this book. I only gave it 3 stars for now though, because again, it's like the way it was split up. And also the thing is, in the movies, I just prefer like the fellowship parts a lot more than the parts of Sam and Frodo, even though I love their friendship. And in the movies, it's kind of fellowship, Sam and Frodo, fellowship, Sam and Frodo. So even if there are parts that are a bit slower and that I'm not as interested in, I can still watch them because I know something more interesting for me personally is coming. However, in this book, the first half is all the fellowship and the second half is all Sam and Frodo. So that was kind of the reason why I set it down back in 2015. But I am definitely happy to be finally done with the second book in The Lord of the Rings. And let's see, maybe later this year or next year I can pick up and finish the third one. After that, I finished another TBR chart pick, and that's from back in January, so the very first TBR chart pick. And now I have no TBR chart picks open anymore, and that is Peter Hartz Sein glückliches Leben erzählt von ihm selbst by Ingo Schulze. And this book just wasn't for me. This is one of those books where I can tell it's probably a good book and an amazing book for the right person, but it's just not for me. It follows Peter Hartz, who grew up in an orphanage in the DDR, so Eastern Germany, during the Cold War. And it just follows his life, because the translation of the title is Peter Hartz, his life as told by himself. And that's basically what it is. But similarly to Karl May, to Von Bagdad nach Stambul, there's just no structure to the story. It just was anecdotes from his life, like 5-minute, 2 to 5 pages anecdotes, and it didn't lead anywhere because of course it just followed his life, and there were more interesting bits like during the time when the Berlin Wall fell, and yeah, it just follows him, and it's mostly about him, his ideologies, how he discusses his ideologies with other people, how they slightly change. And it probably would be an interesting book for like 200 to 300 pages, but the book was 570 pages long, and that was definitely too long for me, which is also why it took me so long to finish it. And then the last book I finished this month was another book that I started back in February and that I'm finally done with, and that is The Legion of Flame by Anthony Ryan, which is the second book in the Draconis Memoriam series. And I really enjoy this series. It's kind of a steampunk with dragons series, which kind of has two parts. The one is like the countries and the war between different countries and politics and so on. And the second part is a huge threat because of dragons. And I really enjoyed the series. I also really enjoyed the first book, but I didn't enjoy the second book quite as much because even though I love the world, it is, first of all, very plot driven, and I often love it more if a book is character driven as well as plot driven, even though there are characters, especially one character that I really like in this series. But my main problem was that I could barely remember anything from the first book, and then I also like took a break in between for quite a long time, a few months, and then I couldn't remember where exactly I had stopped and like what exactly had happened when I stopped reading. And so that kind of sadly took away a little bit from my reading experience, but I would still highly recommend the series if you are into high fantasy and if you want to see something that's a little bit different, but still maybe a bit familiar, but just like that's not your typical chosen one story. And also something that has both the political elements as well as very action-packed scenes. And also if you're into stories with spies, also go for that, because one of the main characters is a female spy and she's absolutely kick-ass. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I started rereading God's Grave by J. Christoph so that I can finally get to Dark Dawn, and I'm about 100 pages in and I absolutely love my reread so far. So I hope I'm done soon so I can get to Dark Dawn. Okay, now the last thing I gotta do is to show you the books that I picked from my TBR jar. And it's already very obvious which one I will pick for this month, but I will still share the other two with you. The first one is Forest Mage by Robin Hobb, which is the second book in the Soldier's Son trilogy, which funnily enough the first book also was a TBR jar pick for me, I think back in March or something like that. Then the second book I picked was The Marillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. And I'm just not gonna pick this because I think I just wanna read the third book of the Lord of the Rings before I pick this one up. I think that would make more sense. But it's just funny that I picked two J.R.R. Tolkien books 2 months after one another. And the last one, when I picked this, I just knew I had to pick this as my TBR jar pick for this month because it's Dracula by Bram Stoker. And when better to read Dracula than in October and around Halloween? I have started this book 2 times already and never finished, but I will definitely finish it this time around. And that was it for this month's wrap up. I am so proud of myself, honestly, that I read this month. And also I'm kind of not worried at all about my reading challenge anymore because I'm 5 books ahead now. I think I only have 5 books left to read or so, and then I am done with my 50 books for the year. So yeah, tell me in the comments down below which books you read this month, if you have read any of the books that I have read this month and how you enjoyed them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe give it a thumbs up and also subscribe. All the links to my social media as always are in the description box down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!